जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यशोदानंदन ब्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे Hare Krishna everyone. Today we will start with Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita. So I'll share my screen. I understand we stopped here last time, so I'll go from here. Even now, my God brothers, you return here on the order of our master, and together we engage in this puja. But simply a festival of flower and fruits does not constitute worship. The one who serves the message of the Guru really worships him. Oh, shame, my dear brothers, aren't you embarrassed? In the manner of businessmen, you increase your disciples. Our master said to preach, let the neophyte remain inside the temples and simply ring the bells. But just take a good look at the terrible situation that has arisen. Everyone has become a sense enjoyer and has given up preaching. From the seas across the earth penetrates the universal shell, come together and preach this Krishna consciousness. Then our master's service will be in proper order. Make your promise today, give up all your politics and diplomacy. If the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati could join and preach together, there was every chance that they could create a spiritual revolution within the sinful world. That had been the hope of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and Bhakti Vedanta Swami expressed that hope in his Vyas Puja offering. When will that day come when a temple will be established in every house in every corner of the world? When will the High Court judge be a Gaudiya Vaishnava with Tilaka beautifully decorating his forehead? When will a Vaishnava winning votes be elected president of the land and preaching be spread everywhere? As he read the poem, its truth exploding in the midst of the gathering of aging sannyasis. Some approved and some were incensed. Their meeting, however, took no new direction. They did not sit together and plan as he had pleaded. Swami Maharaj's poem was taken as another poetic expression or as an opinion. The God brothers were inclined to let the old wounds heal with the passing of time, to go back over the whole thing again and reconstruct the mission as it had been before, when Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had been present, and to attempt all these ambitious programs. How was it possible? They were getting old. Some did not want to take shelter. Some did not want to leave the shelter of Vrindavan. They would worship Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati within the holy dham. If Bhaktivedanta Swami could do something more, let him go ahead and try. Bhaktivedanta Swami returned to Keshighat thoughtful. For many years, he had been unable to take a leading part in the mission because of family commitments. In 1935, in Bombay, his god brothers had even asked him to be president of the Matha there. But Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had said that it was not necessary that Abhacharan join them. He would come in his own way. Now, by the grace of his spiritual master, he was ready to fulfill the meaning of sannyasa. The Krishna conscious world he had described in his poem was not a utopia presented merely to recite inside his god brothers, a dreamer's talk of the impossible. It was possible. But in any case, he had to write and print Krishna conscious books and preach abroad. It was what Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati wanted. If his god brothers would not do it jointly, then he would do it. I'll stop there, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji, thank you.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udhiriyat Nashtaprayesu Bhadresu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtiki. Hare Krishna, everyone. Today we will recite from verse 60 to 62 from chapter 22 of Canto 4. Am I sharing the right screen? Yeah. Matarishvesha sarvatma balena mahasaujasa avisahajataya devo bhagavan bhutarad iva. Matarishvesha sarvatma balena mahasaujasa avishahaya taya devo Bhagavan Bhuta Rad Iva Kandarpa Iva Sonderya Manasvi Mrigarad Iva Vatsalve Manuvan Rinam Prabhutve Bhagavanaja. Brihaspati'r Brahmavade Atmavatte Swayam Hari Bhaktyago Guru Vipreshu Vishwaksenanuvartishu Hiraya Prasaraya Shilabhyam Atmatulya Parodhyame. Brihaspati'r Brahmavade Atmavatte Atmavatve Swayam Hari Bhaktyago Guru Vipreshu Vishwakshe Nanuvartishu Hriya Prarasraya Shilabhyam Atmatulya Parodhyame Brihaspate Brahmavade Atmavatve Swayam Hari Bhaktyago Guru Vipreshu Vishwaksenanuvartishu Hirya Prashraya Shilabhyam Atmatulya Parodhyame. Anybody would like to recite this verse?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Could you start from 60 or only 62?
Just 62, because usually I've seen when there are 3 verses, people only recite one. So you want to recite all.
Okay. Matari Ishbeva Sarvatma Balena Mahashujasha Abhishaya Sata Devo Bhagavan Bhutarativa Kandarpaiva Sundarya Manashpi Nigarativa Vatshalla Manu Vantinam Prabhukti Bhagavan Ajaha Brihaspati Brahmavade Atmavatte Shayam Hari Bhaktya Go Guru Vitreshu Vitekshana Anuvartishu Diyaya Prasharaya Shilabhyam Atma Tulla Prabodhyame. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Bhavri.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I'm also trying.
Hare Krishna, Bhavri.
Maturi Sheva Sarvatma Bolena Mahasojasa Abhiharyataya Devo Bhagavan Bhutaradivo Kandarpoivo Sondarye Manashim Digaradivo Vatsalle Manubengrinam Prabhutte Bhagavan Ajaha Brihaspatir Brahmavade Atma Tatte Shayam Hari Bhaktago Guru Vipreshu Vishakshena Anuvartishu Riya Prasraya Shilajnam Atma Tulla Parodhyame. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Maturishveva Sarvatma Bolena Mahasujasha Abhishayataya Devo Bhagavan Bhutaradivo Kandarpaiva Sundarye Manashvi Nigaradivo Vatsalle Manuvandrinam Prabhutve Bhagavan Ajaha Brihaspati Brahmavade Atmavatve Swayam Hari Bhaktyago Guru Vipreshu Vishwakshenanuvartishu Priya Prasraya Shilabhyam Atmatullah Parodhyame. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Anybody else would like to try? Okay, we'll move ahead. Word-to-word translation of verse 60. Matrishwa, the air, Eva, like, Sarva Atma, all-pervading, Balena, by bodily strength, Mahasha Ojasha, by courage and power, Avisha Hayataya, by intolerance, Deva, the demigod, Bhagavan, the most powerful, Bhutarat Eva, like Rudra or Sadashiv. Kandarpa, Cupid, Eva, like Saundarya in beauty, Manasvi in thoughtfulness, Mrigarati Eva, like the king of the animals, the lion, Vatsalya in affection, Manuvat, like Swambhuva Manu, Nrinam of human society, Prabhutve in the matter of controlling, Bhagavan, the Lord, Aja, Brahma. Verse number 62. Brihaspati, the priest of the heavenly planet, Brahmavade in the matter of spiritual understanding, Atmavate, Vatve in the matter of self-control, Swayam, personally, Hari, the supreme personality of Godhead, Bhaktya in devotion, go, cow, Guru, spiritual master, Vipreshu onto the Brahmanas, Vishwakshena, the personality of Godhead, Anuvartishu, followers, Hriya, by shyness, Prasharaya Shilabhyam, by most gentle behavior, Atmatulya, exactly like his personal interest, Para Udyame, in the matter of philanthropic work. I will go to translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So translation of verse 60. In his bodily strength and in the strength of his senses, Maharaj Prithu was as strong as the wind, which can go anywhere and everywhere. As far as his intolerance was concerned, he was just like the all-powerful Rudra expansion of Lord Shiva or Sadashiv. Anybody would like to read the other two translation?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
I'll try, Mataji.
Yeah, Prabhu, carry on.
Okay, can continue. I'll read the second one here. In his bodily beauty, he was just like Cupid, and his thoughtfulness, he was just like a lion. In his affections, he was just like Swayambhuva Manu, and his ability to control, he was like Lord Brahma. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you.
I'll read the next one. Yeah.
Okay, you read it.
In his personal behavior, Prithu Maharaj exhibited all good qualities, and in spiritual knowledge, he was exactly like Brihaspati. In self-control, he was like the Supreme Person of Godhead himself. As far as devotional service was concerned, he was a great follower of the devotees who were attached to the cow protection and rendering of all service to the spiritual master and the Brahmanas. He was perfect in his shyness and his gentle behavior, and when he engaged in some philanthropic activity, he worked as if he were working for his own personal self. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you. Now we have purport. So we don't have purport for the other two. This is the purport for verse number 62. Anyone would like to recite this? Not recite, but read it.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I'll try.
Try, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. When Lord Chaitanya talked to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, the Lord honored him as the incarnation of Brihaspati. Brihaspati is the chief priest of the heavenly kingdom, and he is a follower of the philosophy known as Brahmavada or Mayavada. Brihaspati is also a great logician. It appears from the statement that Maharaja Prithu, although a great devotee constantly engaged in the loving service of the Lord, could defeat all kinds of impersonalists and Mayavadis by his profound knowledge of Vedic scriptures. We should learn from Maharaja Prithu that a Vaishnava or devotee must not only be fixed in the service of the Lord, but, if required, must be prepared to argue with the impersonalist Mayavadis with all logic and philosophy and defeat their contention that the absolute truth is impersonal. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ideal self-controller or brahmachari. When Krishna was elected to be president of the Rajya Yagna performed by Maharaja Yudhishthir, grandfather Bhishmadev praised Lord Krishna as the greatest brahmachari. Because grandfather Bhishmadev was a brahmachari, he was quite fit to distinguish a brahmachari from a Bevhichari. Although Prithu Maharaj was a householder and father of 5 children, he was still considered to be most controlled. One who begets Krishna conscious children for the benefit of humanity is actually a brahmachari. One who simply begets children like cats and dogs is not a proper father. The word brahmachari also refers to one who acts on the platform of Brahman or devotional service. In the impersonal Brahman conception, there is no activity. Yet when one performs activities in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is to be known as Brahmachari. Thus, Prithu Maharaja was an ideal Brahmachari and Grihastha simultaneously. Vishwa Shenu Bhartishu refers to those devotees who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. Other devotees must follow in their footsteps. Srila Narottama Das Thakur said, Ei Chayo Gosai Jara Muni Tar Das. Ei Choy Gosai Jara Muni Tar Das. I am prepared to become the disciple of anyone who follows in the footsteps of the six Goswamis. Jai Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Also, like all Vaishnavas, Maharaj Prithu was devoted to cow protection, spiritual masters, and qualified brahmanas. Prithu Maharaj was also very humble, meek, and gentle. And whenever he performed any philanthropic work or welfare activity for the general public, he would labor exactly as he were tending to his own personal necessities. In other words, his philanthropic activities were not for the sake of show, but were performed out of personal feeling and commitment. All philanthropic activities should be thus performed. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ahom Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruvai Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Sajivam Sadavaitam Swavadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Priye Vancha Kalpatru Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimate Vidyas Priya Swami Iti Namane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasha Tade Satarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So we see in these purport and verses how Prithu Maharaj was glorified and his qualities. But before we get into his qualities, I'd just like to give a very quick recap of this chapter because we are coming to the end of this chapter. We saw in the first few verses that Prithu Maharaj, through his exemplary reception, how to receive great personalities. So how he received Kumaras, 4 Kumaras. Then we saw how Prithu Maharaj glorifies the Kumaras and inquired from them. So every time when we receive great personalities, we must always inquire from them. We must serve them with humility and inquire from them. And then we saw in the next verses that Sanat Kumara answers Prithu Maharaj's questions. And after that, Prithu Maharaj glorifies the Kumaras. And then the next part of the chapter focuses on the glorious rule of Prithu Maharaj. And then from 56, it starts with the qualities of Prithu Maharaj. So basically, this very important point to miss and to focus in this chapter is that it starts with the arrival of Kumaras, and then Prithu Maharaj shows from his example that how one should be eager to receive the great personalities. Then in fifth verse, Grihastha Ashram has been explained that being a Grihastha, one should receive saintly personality very eagerly. And how? So the example in that verse, it said, Prithu Maharaj with shoulders lowered in humility, offered them seats, worshipped them according to the scriptures, washed their feet, and sprinkled that water over his head. Thus he showed how to receive a saint. Offering a seat, he spoke sweet words and inquired from them. So there is a verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita Antalila 16.60 that talks about, which is along the same line of what Prithu Maharaj has done here, that there are 3 things that gives us strength in our spiritual life. and that is Bhakta pada dhuli ara, Bhakta pada jala, Bhakta bhukta avashesha, Tina mahabala. The dust of the feet of a devotee, the water that has washed the feet of a devotee, and the remnants of food left by a devotee are three very powerful substances. So if we focus on these three, when we are receiving the guest, we can progress spiritually. And why the dust of the feet of devotee and water wash their feet is so important? Because that dust can purify us. We can become free from material contamination. In Bhagavatam, 5th canto, chapter 12, verse 12, it explains that unless one has opportunity to smear his entire body with the dust of lotus feet of great devotees, one cannot relish the absolute truth. The absolute truth is only revealed to one who has attained the mercy of a great devotee. And then in Srimad Bhagavatam, Uddhava has concluded after his prayers, he glorifies the dust of the greatest devotee of Krishna, gopis. And that was number 10.47.63. Uddhava glorifies that I constantly glorify the dust of the feet of women of Nanda's cowherds' pastures. Their chanting of the activities of Lord Krishna purify the entire universe. And when we talk about dust, how can we forget the dust of Vrindavan, the Vraja? Why that dust is so important? What is the glory? So in the Bhagavatam, it says that without being bathed in the dust of the great soul's feet, one cannot expect to know God by any other means, which we saw earlier. So Vrindavan's speciality is that not only it has the dust of Radha and Krishna's feet present there, but all the associates and devotees, all the millions of pilgrims who come every year, they make the ground sacred by touching their bare feet. And as they wander to its temples, many temples, and they do parikrama of the Holy Land itself. So it is as though their entire spiritual energy has passed into the dust through their feet. And the greater the devotion, the more the energy is channelized into the ground. There is a story in terms of the dust of a devotee, that how even Krishna appreciates the dust of the devotee. So one day, Krishna, it's a Leela, of course, Krishna can't get sick, but he said, oh, I am very sick, call all the physicians in Dwarka. Many physicians came and they offered lots of types of cure. And it's like, no, I'm not getting well. I'll suggest my own medicine. You bring that medicine for my headache. And he said, if some of my devotees will give the dust of his feet on my head, then I will be cured. So Krishna, being the Supreme Personality of Godhead, devotees will be scared to provide their dust, because that can be offensive, as they can land up in hell due to such an offense. So first devotees, everywhere it was approached that please give your dust of feet. Krishna is suffering. He has got very bad headache. But people said, no, how can I give dust of my feet? And then Krishna, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who wants to give the dust of their feet? But when the gopis were approached, and when they heard, they focused on Krishna. So when they heard, not themselves that we will go to hell, but they focused on Krishna, that, oh, Krishna is suffering. Krishna is sick. So, and it is his urgent necessity. So they have urgently immediately gave their dust. Take it away, take it immediately. Even after doing this, if we go to hell, never mind. Krishna must be pleased.
You know how to just check whether there is any.
Savitri Mataji, can you please mute your...
So we set up later.
Savitri Mataji?
But check. So whether the up is wet or open.
Maybe host can mute Savitri Mataji.
Animal diseases or something like that. Hazards are there.
Hare Krishna.
I'll do that one for you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So where I was, yeah. So they gave the dust so happily that take it to Krishna. I'm happy to go to hell. So they were not thinking about themselves, but only to please Krishna for Krishna's convenience. And this is the first consideration. So this is the topmost devotee, prepared to do anything without any consideration. There's Anya Vilashita Sunyam Anukulena Krishnanu Shilanam. So there should be no personal desire other than the desire to please Krishna. And personal desire should be zero. So Anya Vilashita Sunyam Jnana Karmana Vartan. So simply one should try to please Krishna. There is no other consideration, only to satisfy Krishna, and that is pure bhakti. So that's what we understand from this story, that Krishna's love for his pure devotees is so strong. So Prabhupada explained this in Bhagavatam, that in 2.3.23 purport, he has explained that Lord Shri Krishna is the property of his pure unconditional devotees. And as such, only the devotees can deliver Krishna to another devotee. Krishna is never obtainable directly. Lord Chaitanya therefore designated himself as Gopi Bharto Pada Kamalayor Dasa Dasana Das, or the most obedient servant of the servants of the Lord, who maintains the Gopi damsels at the Vrindavan. So a pure devotee never would want to approach Lord directly. So the mood is that we try to please the servant of the Lord's servant, and thus the Lord becomes pleased. So I'll go to the next one, that we are seeing lots of glorification happening in this chapter. And there is a very common theme to glorify the great personalities. So let's learn from Prithu Maharaj's example, that how one should glorify the great personalities and what should we inquire from them. So then Maharaj Prithu glorifies the four Kumaras in starting of the chapter when he was receiving them. So Maitra Rishi, just after his glorification verses, he has glorified Prithu Maharaj for how wonderfully he has glorified. So what he has mentioned, that Prithu Maharaj's speech had 4 things he has used while glorifying the Kumaras. So from this we can learn how to glorify. So let's see those 4 things. So it was Saram, Shushtu, Mitham, Madhu. So when we are glorifying, it needs to be meaningful. So what he glorified about Kumaras, it was meaningful. And what he said, he meant it. And then it is Shushtu, appropriate. So his way of glorifying was appropriate. And then it's Mitham, which means his words were very precise. And it was Madhu. It was very sweet. So this is how one should greet and glorify when they receive great personalities. So Prithu Maharaj is setting an example for Grihastha to follow. So after glorifying, what do we do? So we are basically, he is teaching from his example how to receive great personalities. So we offer them seat, we offer them sweet words, and then, of course, we need to inquire from them. And what do we inquire? We don't inquire about material things, because then it is wasting their time. So the best thing to inquire is about our spiritual progress. So from his example, Prithu Maharaj asked a question. He inquired about person engaged or entangled in his dangerous material existence because of their previous actions. So sometimes saintly personality can come to your door, and people possibly because they are new, or they are not, they haven't been trained, so they don't know how to ask saintly personality what questions to ask. But when we read these examples, we can learn how to ask and what to ask so that it will benefit us spiritually. So Prithu Maharaj asked that one should ask is how we can achieve the ultimate goal of life. One should know the goal of your life, which should be how to get rid of getting entangled in the material world. There's very interesting pastime of Prabhupada, very short conversation. Once a devotee asked a question to Prabhupada, and this is just one example. So he asked that, how should I know that whatever service I'm doing, that Lord is actually getting pleased? Because of course we can't hear Lord, thank you for your service, I'm very pleased today, or I'm not very pleased today. So how do we know that Lord is actually pleased? So Prabhupada replied that by doing any service that we do, if after doing that service that increases our taste for hearing and chanting, that means the Lord is pleased with us. But if that service, through that service, if our taste for chanting is not increasing, that means somewhere we are not able to please Lord very effectively. We are not doing our best to please him. And sometimes, like Prabhupada has also given example of what not to do when you approach great personalities, how not to, with what mood not to go. So he has mentioned that, like in the example of sometimes people go to many devotees to ask questions, and then they choose, okay, this answer, I like it, so I'll follow this, I won't follow that. So Prabhupada has guided that you should not ask a sadhu a question if you're not going to accept the answer. So we should only ask a question if we are in a mood to respect the person and accept that answer. And so we have seen this. So let's go with why to glorify as devotees, because we are talking about glorifying. Not first, before that, we go with qualities of Prithu Maharaj in all these 3 verses, which is very interesting. So first one is his bodily strength is described as wind. So we see wind is so pervading, it's so strong. Especially in flood time, people in Auckland would have realized the strength of the wind, what it can do. That's very powerful. It can even uproot trees in strong winds. His strength was compared as strong as wind. He has Krishna's. So Prithu Maharaj had Krishna potency within him to rule. So rule like as powerful like a wind. So he was a very strong king in terms of his bodily strength and the strength of his senses. And in terms of his senses, he was very intelligent because he knew what to do. He can take his praja towards spirituality. So when he became king, first thing is made sure that everybody is fed. Nobody is hungry. They had food. So first responsibility of a ruler he fulfilled, that everyone has something to eat and something to be engaged, because empty mind is a mind of a devil. So we can only progress spiritually when our mind is not empty with no activity. So those were the arrangement that was made by Prithu Maharaj, so that people can be materially satisfied. So it can be facilitated for spiritual advancement. And that was most important for the king. So many arrangements were made just for that. And he was Balena. So king has to be very powerful that no one should dare to challenge him. The next one, next quality is intolerant. Intolerant as Rudra. all-powerful expansion of Sadashiv. So in terms of expansion, we know Sadashiv is in the spiritual world and Rudra is in, there are many Rudras as part of the material universes, because there are many different universes. So point to note here is, how can an intolerance be a quality? People may think like that we have heard tolerance is a quality, but intolerance as a quality. So there's some example that in the case of tolerant quality, there just like it's very good to be tolerant. If someone is bothering us, or then we have to be tolerant, as that is connected to our chanting. That's what we have been taught through Trinadapi Sunichaina, tolerant as a tree. Because when we chant in that mood, then it creates the mood of Kirtane Sadahari. So that is the connection of our tolerance with our chanting. So the more we are able to tolerate inconveniences, the better our chanting is going to be. Otherwise, our mind is going to be disturbed with, if we don't tolerate, if we have not developed our tolerance capacity, then basically our mind will be filled with, oh, this person has said that person has said that, or I'm troubled with this, I'm troubled with that. So even our whole chanting time will just get wasted. So it's better that we develop the quality of tolerance. But then what is this intolerance here? So that means there is a time to be tolerant and there is a time to be intolerant. So we should tolerate inconveniences for ourselves to do our service, but we should be intolerant towards seeing anybody else, if an injustice happens to somebody else. Like, for example, if someone is giving trouble or causing troubles to others, like small children around you, and we have a mood that, oh, I'm tolerant and I don't want to do anything, that is actually not a quality, that is fake tolerance. Because we tolerate for ourselves, but we don't but it's a quality if we are intolerant when other devotees are being blasphemed, or they are framed, or they are put into some difficult situation by other devotees. So we should not tolerate such behaviors for others. So it is all about when to be tolerant and when not to be tolerant, what to speak and when not to speak. These type of things comes as wisdom that requires intelligence to discriminate what principle to apply when. So there is a jnana given, we have the knowledge, and there's vijnana, which is science. So we need to use that wisdom to apply the knowledge at certain circumstances, which is applied knowledge. So it's not always black and white. We can take guidance if we are stuck in such situation, but it is best to purify our intelligence through studying shastras, and that way when something like that comes up, our intelligence is purified enough to help us take right decisions. So that's why he was just like all powerful, like Lord Rudra, because he was protecting his praja. He was intolerant towards any bad behaviors. So there is a times of anger too. So when devotees are troubled or offended, or one is getting envious of a sincere devotee, then it is legitimate, it's right to be angry. That anger is justified. And then in the next few verses, in verse 61, his quality is described that he was beautiful like Cupid, his thoughtfulness like lion, is affectionate like Manu Maharaj, and is powerful like Lord Brahma. And in verse 62, his qualities are described that he was knowledgeable in spiritual science, exactly like Brihaspati. So he's compared to Brihaspati, who is the chief priest of heavenly kingdom, as very knowledgeable. And in self-controlled, so this is what Prabhupada has also described very well, and very, he has extensively has described in his purport that how he is self-controlled, and he was like the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in self-control, he was like the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself. So Prabhupada explained in purport that Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ideal, he was ideal self-control and an ideal brahmachari. So people may think how brahmachari is linked to someone who has married, and in case of Krishna, he has married 16,108 wives. So how he's considered as a brahmachari? So in that purport, it is explained that Bhishma Dev is glorifying Krishna as a great brahmachari, and his glorification has most weightage because Bhishma Dev was known for being a very great brahmachari. And here Prithu Maharaj is also a grihastha, but he is also a great brahmachari. In what sense? Because he also begetted 5 children, but he's still a brahmachari because he followed all the rules and regulations of Shastras. So one who doesn't beget child like cats and dogs is a brahmachari because they are able to control their senses. So when one follows the Garbhadhan Sanskara, then great soul takes shelter of such womb. And then these children do great jobs in Krishna consciousness. So in this way, Prithu Maharaj is glorified here. And as far as his devotional service was concerned, he was a great follower of devotees who was attached to cow protection and the rendering of all service to the spiritual master and the brahmanas. And since we are talking about glorification, I will conclude with why we should glorify Lord and his devotees. What is the importance? So the main thing, I think overall, we do understand that it is recommended because it is good for one's spiritual practice and it brings auspiciousness. So let's see from Srila Prabhupada's purport on why it is important to glorify Lord and his devotees. So what he has mentioned in Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada has mentioned that a devotee is also sometimes described as Uttama Shloka, meaning that he is eager to glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead or the Lord's devotees. Glorifying the Lord and glorifying the Lord's devotees are the same, or rather, glorifying the devotee is more important than glorifying the Lord directly. And Narottama Das Thakura explains this fact. Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Paeche Keba. One cannot be liberated from material contamination without sincerely serving a devotee of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada has explained this in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10. And there's also one very interesting point he has mentioned. Prabhupada has mentioned 4 things that happens when one glorifies the Lord or his devotees. It's mentioned in Back to Godhead magazine. And those 4 things are: it pleases the Lord, it purifies the glorifier, it develops one's spiritual qualities, and it attracts others to this glorification. So from all these 4 things, we understand that by glorifying Lord and his devotees, we become purified and we grow further in our spirituality. And we had wonderful Srila Prabhupada Appearance Day, where we heard glorification of Srila Prabhupada. So that's how a system has been set to help us progress spiritually by being able to offer glorification to such great personalities and progress spiritually. So thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. If anybody has any comments, questions, please let me know.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Even explanation of the verses from 60 to 62. Such a nice explanation you have given, giving us the whole chapter within a very simple and easiest way to understand the glories of Prithu Maharaj. And you have categorized them in such a good way to understand the importance of these chapters, particularly because it glorifies the qualities of Prithu Maharaj. And that qualities, when we read, it surely and certainly gives some imbibement into our spiritual development. As Srila Prabhupada said, why we should glorify the great devotees and the Lord simultaneously, because it invites the qualities through our sadhana. So that qualities passes through when you do glorify the devotees and the Lord. It's very, very important to understand this chapter particularly. It is very important also for our spiritual development. Because all these gunas or qualities are very, very needed in every step of our spiritual advancement. We cannot avoid anything else. Each and every point has its personal impact on us that gives us the right direction to follow in our spiritual advancement. And you have nicely explained how Prithu Maharaj is glorified right from the text is going from I think 49 to 63. All the qualities are described, and such an elaborately you explain these things, how important to understand this glory of Maharaj. So that's why Nottam Das Thakur says, Chariya Vaishnav Sheva Nistara Paiche Keva. Without serving the Lord's devotees, cannot be saved from the spiritual development. So that is the best part of it. This serving the devotees will naturally grow in your spiritual advancement. And that is the takeaway for me. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you for just unpacking of these three verses. So many things to learn. One of the things that really struck me is that intolerance is also one of the good qualities that was possessed by Prithu Maharaj. I was just thinking, how can that be? But you explained very well. So we should be intolerant to any injustice being done to other devotees or the Lord. So one good example is Hanumanji. I mean, Hanumanji was very impatient and intolerant to protect Mother Sita when she was kidnapped. So also, it's because he was so intolerant, he's literally burnt Lanka. So this is one good example where intolerance can be a good quality that is possessed by the devotee. Thank you for elaborating this. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, very good example.
Adding to this, the other one is our Jagai Madai. How Jagai Madai was thrown the pot towards Nityananda Prabhu, and how God, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got angry. But yes, so that is the example of intolerance. So when the devotees are troubled by the non-devotees or general people, the Lord and the devotee cannot tolerate. So that is another example. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam. Thank you very, very much for the very nice class, explaining explaining elaborately the qualities of Prithu Maharaj and the way we should follow his in our personal life, so that we can progress spiritually. And just as an extension of the point of tolerance and intolerance, one thing came to my mind just to share with others, that often the thing is that what is applicable in material life, I mean, in a normal way, in transcendental life, it doesn't work that way. Just as something is to be tolerated, and we do not, for want of societal customs and practice, we do not try to violate it. But in spiritual life, when it is not favorable for the service of the Lord, we should ignore that social customs and practice. And in this way, we can only progress. And one story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in Chaitanya Lila, it is very clearly stated about Govinda, who was a personal servant, personally serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And it is mentioned in Antolila that one day, it was the long-standing practice that Govinda was messaging Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the daytime, after he has taken his meal, lunch. And one day when when Govinda came to enter the room of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he found the Lord is lying on the door in such a way that he cannot enter. And he requested Lord 2-3 times. The Lord told, "I am tired." He was the Supreme Personality, but he told he's tired. And Govinda requested him 2-3 times, but again the Lord told, "If you like to do, or if you do not like to do, don't do." And in this way he stopped. And Govinda had to decide on that time what he has to do. In one way, he has to serve the Lord, that is his duty. And on the other, he has to, if he cross the Lord, that is the doubt in his mind, that arose in his mind, that whether I should cross it or don't cross it. But then to overcome that problem, he put a chadar or a cloth on the body of the Lord and crossed it and messaged the body of the Lord. But he stayed there. Normally, once he finishes that, he goes back for his lunch to take his prasadam. But that day he didn't do. He was sitting. And when Mahaprabhu woke up, almost 45 or about an hour later, he found that Govinda is still waiting. And the Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu got a bit annoyed. Govinda, he was still sitting, because Lord was so kind to Govinda that he has taken the the lunch. The Lord was very unhappy and told, "Why you are waiting?" But Govinda remained silent, because he knew that, he didn't reply. That in other words, he was trying to prove by the story that what is our duty for the Lord, that we can break any rules and serve the Lord. Serving the Lord is the ultimate thing. And all the rules are secondary. So in this way, this, as you are told, tolerance and intolerance is also a very, in the dialectic, these are the dialectics of material life. And we should apply them properly in our devotional service, that these so-called rules and stopping us and doing it, we have to apply in such a way that we can progress spiritually. That should be our, and not following the rules. Because, of course, there is a very high thing. It is not that we should violate the rules always, but we should take the opinion of the senior Vaishnavas and Brahmanas to find out whether we're doing. But in circumstances when we have to decide, we have to keep this in mind very carefully, that if we are doing service to the Lord, all rules, we can break any rules. It is for the service of the Lord. But if it is not for the Lord, then we should not violate any rule. Hare Krishna, this is my realization, and just thought that I can share with you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. You said the main principle is always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna in whatever we do.
Yeah, that's what Hare Krishna. That's what you explained in this. How Krishna has a headache, but the gopis didn't care about that. The most important thing, the Lord should not be in pain. So for Lord pleasure, they are devoted to do anything. So that they gave this food dust to relieve Lord's headache. So that is the main service. So they didn't care. If they go to hell, doesn't matter, but it is for them. So that is how example helps us. That's why intelligence is very, very important. What is the intelligence means to understand the right and wrong thing. So as Prabhuji mentioned, what is the most important thing? The service to the Lord or service to the devotee is more important rather than the law. Law is secondary. So that is very, very important point. Thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. So if anybody has no questions or comments, then should we conclude the class here?
It appears, Mataji, yes, no one is there to make any questions or comments. So thank you very much for the nice class. Bancha
Kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai. Madhurima Mataji ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.
All glories to the assembled devotees.